Episode 1, The Knocking Begins. They sealed it with holy oil and a dowsing bricks. The priest swore nothing was inside, but every night since Tuesday, something has been knocking from the inside. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a restoration specialist. Historical churches, crumbling altars, relics me hands have touched forgotten faith. I came to St. Malachi's Chapel on assignment. The Vatican sent a request for silent inspection strictly off the record. No press, no locals, no cameras, just me and the past. When I arrived, the church stood like a wounded soldier. Stone ribs cracked, paint peeling from angel wings, dust as thick as time itself. But the strangest part, one wall was newer, a pale patch of brick, uneven, as if someone had rushed to hide something. They said it was just a collapsed alcove, nothing more. They lied. The first night, I slept inside the chapel to catalog the murals. Midnight came, the wind was dead, my lantern burned low, and then I heard it knock, knock, not once, not twice, 3 times, from that sealed wall behind the altar, as if a fist was calling to be let out, or let in. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then came the whisper, a woman's voice, distant, hollow. Open it. I turned, heart racing, but there was no one, just the smell of incense mixed with something damp, metallic, like blood. The next day, I questioned the parish keeper, an old man named Father Grayson. He trembled when I asked about the wall, said the chapel had its own silence, and I shouldn't disturb it, but silence doesn't knock, and silence doesn't whisper. On the second night, I recorded everything. Camera, audio. I placed my hand on the bricks, waiting. Midnight struck. Knock, knock, knock. Again, the same rhythm, but this time, the bricks were warm. I pressed my ear to the surface, and I heard it breathing. Someone was alive inside. I should have left. I should have run, but curiosity is the devil's favorite sin, and mine was already whispering through holy stone. Tomorrow, I'll break through the wall. I don't know what I'll find, but I think something has been waiting for me for over 100 years. Episode 3, The Woman Without a Face. She stood less than 2 feet from me, the woman, or what was left of her. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin stretched tight across her skull, as if God had forgotten to finish her. Her hand, skeletal and shaking, still pointed toward the hole I had opened in the wall. Her presence wasn't cold, it was empty, like the absence of a soul. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. Then she vanished. No fade, no step, just gone, like she'd never been there. But I know what I saw, and something deep in my gut whispered she wasn't showing herself to scare me. She was warning me. At dawn, I returned to the chapel, my hands blistered from the crowbar, my mind fraying at the edges. But I had to see what lay behind the wall. I removed 6 more bricks. The room behind it had stairs leading downward, not carved, but smoothed, as if worn by countless feet. Ornise, dust clung to the air, thick with a scent I couldn't name, something older than death. I threw a stone down the steps. No sound, just swallowing silence. I should have called someone, the Vatican, a historian, a priest, but I didn't, because I think I was already being claimed. I went to the library that evening, searched for anything related to St. Malachi's renovations. What I found wasn't a blueprint, it was a burial record. In 1893, a young nun named Sister Corinne was woeful for her sins. No ceremony, no grave, just a single line, entombed beneath the altar. May her silence bless us all. My blood ran cold. The faceless woman was a nun. But why entomb her alive? What sin could deserve that? A handwritten note was attached to the file, yellow with age. Trembling ink. It read, "Do not remove the bricks. She still listens." That night, I stayed in a hotel. I locked the door, pushed furniture against it, left every light on. But at exactly 3 a.m., the bulbs flickered, the TV turned to static, and in the mirror above the sink, she was behind me, closer this time, her mouth now visible stitched shut with black thread. And still, she whispered, "One more brick." Episode 4, The Forbidden Psalm. I returned to the chapel at first light, not because I was brave, because the whisper wouldn't stop. One more brick. It repeated all night, threading through my dreams like a needle dragging shadow through silk. The stitched mouth of the nun appeared again and again, each time closer, each time louder, though her lips never moved. One more brick, one more sin. I brought a lantern and a flask of holy water, as if either could protect me from what waited in the dark. The altar wall looked the same, but the hole was wider than I remembered, as if somewhere something had continued my work while I slept. I removed the next brick. My hands bled from the edge. Behind it, parchment, dry, crumbling, but intact. a scroll, tucked inside the cavity like a relic. The language was Latin, ancient, twisted, and the title chilled me. Some of the Forgotten Flesh. It wasn't scripture. It was a warning. He who shans this tongue in holy walls opens breath where none should dwell. A voice will rise, but not from throat. A lamp will burn, a veil will swell. Below it was a seal, the same circle pierced by a nail I'd seen carved above the hidden altar. I dropped the scroll. My breath caught in my chest. I should have fled, burned the paper, but part of me wanted to read the psalm aloud. I lit 3 candles in front of the broken wall and whispered the first line. The chapel groaned. The air thickened. Thiene heard it from deep inside the stairs below the altar, singing a chorus of children's voices, pure but broken, as if chanting underwater. They sang the same verse I had whispered. Then a scream cut through it. Not a voice, an instrument, a violin, screeching, tearing, like it was being played by bones. And then silence, except for one final word that slithered into my ear, spoken by the faceless nun, now standing just behind the veil of bricks. Descent. Episode 5, The Descent. I descended the stairs with the psalm in my pocket. Each step felt like a betrayal. The air grew colder, denser, not the chill of a basement, but something else. Is something wrong. It smelled of wet ash and old breath, the kind of scent that clings to forgotten tombs. The light from my lantern dimmed as I went deeper. I swear the shadows began to lean toward me, like curious children hungry for story. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a room carved in a perfect circle. No windows, no altar, only kneelers, rows of them, each one carved from black stone, and on every kneeler, dried blood, as if generations had prayed there on broken knees. The wall ahead was covered in symbols, carved into it. Scratched reality were verses I didn't recognize. Not scripture, not poetry, just fragments. Her silence seals the gate. Speak and the flesh remembers. He comes in psalms not meant to be sung. And at the center, a door, no handle, no hinges, just a slab of stone with a nail-pierced circle etched in gold. I reached out. My fingers barely grazed the surface when I heard her again. The nun, only this time, her voice wasn't hollow. It was angry. Do not open the veil. I spun around nothing, but I felt her breath against my neck. Trembling. Then I noticed something carved into the base of the door. A warning, not Latin, English. Knock 7 times, and he will answer, but you will not like his voice. I backed away, but behind me, the stairs had vanished. No wall, no path back, just black. I was sealed in. I tried to scream, but the chapel above me swallowed sound like a throat swallows air. Panic caught up my spine. I pounded on the stone, called out to anyone. No response. And then something knocked back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The stone door began to bleed. Thin lines of black ichor trickled from the symbols, forming shapes on the floor, twisting. Alive. The room pulsed, and then the door breathed. It inhaled and whispered one word into my skull. Welcome. Episode 6, The Voice That Should Not Speak. The door exhaled, and the light died. Total blackness. Not the kind you blink through. This was complete. A darkness that pressed against my eyes like wet cloth. And, 10. The voice came. It didn't echo. It didn't vibrate. It burrowed straight into my skull, into my bones. It didn't speak English. It didn't speak Latin. It spoke me. Every thought I'd buried, every memory I locked away, it twisted them, turned them into sentences I couldn't deny. You wanted to see, so see. You wanted to open, so enter. You wanted to know God, so meet the one who was cast beneath him. And then I saw, not with eyes, with something else. A vision poured into my mind like oil through cracks in the soul. I saw Sister Kareem, bound in chains, kneeling, her mouth torn open and stitched again. She wasn't possessed. She was a vessel. The church hadn't imprisoned her for sin. They'd sealed her away because she was the only one who could hear him. The voice from beneath the altar, not God, not Satan, something older, a being the early priests called the undrowned word. The first voice, the one before creation, the one God silenced when he said, "Let there be light." I collapsed to my knees. The door pulsed again, and a thin crack formed. From inside, a hand pushed through, but it wasn't flesh. It wasn't bone. It was scripture. A hand made of living pages, veins like ink, fingertips that bled words I couldn't understand. They curled toward me, not in greeting, but in invitation. I turned. I ran. The blackness didn't stop me because it wanted me to go. It wanted me to carry what I'd seen above, to preach it. I don't remember how I got out. I woke in the pew, face bloody, shirt torn, palms burned with the imprint of the nail-pierced symbol. And at the base of the altar, Written in ash, every church needs a voice. Episode 7, the sermon that spreads. I left the chapel at dawn, but it didn't leave me. The voice, it had made a home inside me. It didn't speak in full sentences. Not yet. It suggested. It moved behind my thoughts like a second shadow. A pressure behind the eyes. Like something growing, forming. I told myself I was fine. I lied. I took a train out of town. I needed space, distance, something to prove I was still in control. But even surrounded by strangers, I could feel it pulsing in my chest, beating like a second heart. That night, in the motel, I had a dream. No, a sermon. I stood in front of a congregation with no faces, just ropes, down scenes of them, silent, waiting, and I spoke, not in my voice, in his. The words poured out like blood from a wound. I don't remember what I said, only how it felt like giving birth to something unholy, something true. When I woke, I had written it down, on the motel wall, in my own handwriting. The first line read, "In the beginning was not the word, it was the whisper." The second, "And those who hear it shall echo it." That morning, the motel clerk wouldn't meet my eyes. She asked if I was a preacher. I said no. She said, "Then why did everyone in room for Neil last night?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't. Something is spreading, like a contagion made of syllables. I went online, posted anonymously about what I found, about the altar, the hidden stairs, the psalm, a cry for help, disguised as a blog entry. It was deleted in 5 minutes. Then I got an email, no sender, no subject, only one sentence. "He waits to be preached." Attached was a photo. It was me, standing at the altar, only hand gone back, and in the photo, I was smiling. Episode 8, the ones who kneel. I tried to forget. I deleted the emails, burned the pages, left the town behind me like a grave I refused to visit. But the whisper travels. It doesn't need wires or ink or memory. It needs ears. I write in a small village 3 states away. No name worth mentioning. One church, one gas station, one motel. I figured if I could hide in the quiet long enough, maybe the voice would fade. But quiet isn't safe anymore. It's where it speaks the loudest. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I went into the chapel, not by choice. My feet walked me there before my mind agreed. Inside, the congregation Saturday in silence. 20 people, still, heads down, every one of them barefoot, hands bleeding, and at the front standing at the pulpit was a child, no older than 10. She spoke in a voice too deep for her lungs. "Come, measured, in silence we sinned, in sound we shall be saved." And then she looked at me, straight into my soul, as if she'd been waiting. "The one who broke the wall is here." They all turned, as lowly, as one, and then, they knelt. No one told them to, no signal, just instant obedience. I ran back to the motel, packed my things, heart racing, hands shaking, but on the mirror, written in breath, "Preach." I screamed, shattered the glass, fell to my knees, because I understood. Now, I am the vessel. I opened the wall. I brought the sermon out, and now, it's looking for a pulpit. The next morning, the motel receptionist handed me a note. No envelope, just 3 words. "They are listening." I turned to ask who gave it to her. She was kneeling. Episode 9, the listener's mark. I checked my hands this morning. There's something new. A mark faint at first, like ash smudged into my palm. But as the hours passed, it deepened. A perfect circle, pierced by a single vertical line. The same symbol carved into the hidden altar. The same symbol etched into Sister Corinne's cell. It's on me now. I tried to scrub it off. Soap, bleach, fire. Nothing worked. It's not on my skin. It's beneath it. The receptionist hasn't moved from her knees. She just hums, now soft, tuneless, constant. The humming vibrates through the walls like a low, wordless prayer. At 3 a.m., I heard the knock again, but this time it came from the ceiling. I looked up, written in soot, across the motel ceiling. "He listens through you." I packed and drove. No map, just instinct. Roads twisted like veins across dead land. Every sign blurred. Every GPS signal failed. The world bends around him. I stopped for gas in a town that looked abandoned. But as I walked into the store, the clerk, a man in priest robes, though his collar was torn, didn't speak. He simply pointed to a radio on the counter. It was on, but there was no station, just static, until I heard it, my voice, reading scripture I've never seen, verses I've never known, but they flowed like memory, and the veil between flesh and word was torn, and the mouth was saying his name. I looked at the clerk. His eyes were gone, hollowed, but his smile. That's when I realized, this isn't spreading by speech. It spreads by hearing, not belief, not faith, just exposure. Once you've heard the voice, it plants itself, and you become part of the altar. Every whisper, every knock, every humming kneeler. We're not just witnesses, we're transmitters. At dusk, I found an old church off the road, broken spire, shattered glass. Inside, I expected ruin, but no, they were there, waiting, down scenes, hundreds, all kneeling, and at the center, the faceless nun, stitches undone, smiling. She opened her arms, and they echoed one word: preach. Episode 10, the blood verse. They say when you dream of drowning, it means something wants to pull you back where you came from. I dreamed I drowned in ink, thick, black, alive. It poured from my mouth, from my eyes, and I wrote with it pages and pages onto the floor, the walls, my own skin. When I woke, I was in the chapel again. I don't remember walking there, but the doors were open, the altar candles lit, the congregation kneeling, and on the pulpit, a book. It hadn't been there before, bound in flesh, pages stitched with thread the color of old blood. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The first page wasn't written, it was branded, the gospel of the first sound. Verse 1. The word was never meant to be silent. As I read, something awakened in me, not knowledge, not memory, a function. The voice inside me was no longer whispering. It was dictating. I stepped up to the pulpit. My hands trembled. The mark on my palm burned like fire pressed into bone. And I spoke. My voice was not my own. It echoed with layers. Male, female, ancient, infant. It was every voice ever silenced. And the people wept. Some clutched their ears. Others clawed at their faces. But they didn't run. They listened. Because it wasn't a sermon. It was a commandment. I said things I don't remember, words I can't repeat, but they heard, and they changed. One by one, their eyes rolled white, their mouths open wider than mouths should, and from within, scripture poured out, not sound, blood. Each word they bled onto the floor formed a sigil, a pattern, a portal. The ground beneath the altar cracked. A shape stirred below, not a demon, not a god, a tongue, massive, writhing, covered in eyes, and it spoke through me. Preach me into the bones of the world. I collapsed, my vision blurred, and in the flickering candlelight, I saw the nun once more, but this time, she had a mouth, and she was singing. Episode 11, those who've seen in tongues. I woke up in the woods, naked, mouth stained with ink, hands trembling, my fingernails were blackened, as if I'd been clawing at something beneath the earth. I should have been afraid, but I felt empty, not numb, hollow, like something had been scooped out of me. And what remained was just the echo. I walked for hours before I found the road again, hitchhiked to the next town, small, nameless, fading like the edge of a dream. I needed food, water, sanity. Instead, I found a church, not by choice. I passed it by accident or thought I did, but no matter how far I walked, it was always at the next turn. The bell tower broken, the door open. Inside, the pews were full, not people bodies, upright, motionless, dressed in Sunday clothes stiff with dry blood. I stitched shut, mouths sewn open. Their throats vibrated, quiet, monotone. They were humming, not a song, not a melody, a frequency. It hurt my teeth just to hear it. And at the front, written on the wall in fresh red, those who believe the song become the choir. A woman approached me, late 60s, veil over her face, Bible in her arms. She called me Reverend. I told her I wasn't. She smiled. You were chosen the moment you opened the altar. I turned to leave, but the doors vanished. What became stone? The room pulsed. The congregation rose. One by one, they began to speak in tongues. Not gibberish, not possession. They spoke in unison. My words, my sermons, from the altar, from the book, from the dream. Each voice matched mine perfectly. I covered my ears. Didn't matter, they were inside me. The nun appeared again, standing in the aisle. Only now, she had eyes, mouth, voice, tears. She held the book, and she sang, "The word is made flesh, and the flesh has remembered." The congregation fell to their knees, and from their open mouths came scripture carved in light. The walls cracked, the bell above rang without wind, and I realized this wasn't the end of the sermon. This was the beginning of the gospel. Episode 12, the flesh becomes the pulpit. They don't build churches anymore. They grow them. I've seen them, rising from soil like tumors made of bone in him, wall stitched from skin, pews carved from marrow, and at the center always an altar that breathes. They call them pulpits of the new word. And I am their architect. I didn't mean to be. I never wanted to preach, but that voice chose me. The altar marked me. And now, the world listens, even when it doesn't want to. The gospel has spread beyond stone and sanctuary. It's on the wind now, on signal towers, on lips that never learned it but hum it in sleep. It's in blood. 3 days ago, I watched a man carve verses into his chest in the middle of a grocery store. When the police arrived, he spoke in my voice, and the words he bled into the tile matched the psalm I read in episode 3 word for word. They didn't arrest him. They knelt. And yesterday, the sky changed. It bent, tilted, as if the heavens had made room for something else. A new choir. I heard the ringing, not from bells but from within, a resonance in the bones of the earth, as if the world itself had become a mouth, and it was opening. Last night, I stood before a mirror, and the nun stood behind me, but this time, she placed her hand on my shoulder. She whispered only one thing. You were never meant to silence him, only to carry him. My reflection began to bleed, from the eyes, the ears, the mouth. Not red, ink. Verses wrote down the glass in perfect lines, and I saw my fate. I will be the final pulpit. My spine will be the binding. My skin, the pages. My voice, the gospel. And when he will speak without me, because the altar is no longer in the wall. It's in all of us. Episode 13. And then there was no silence. There is no silence anymore. Not in sleep, not in death, not even in prayer. The voice has filled everything. Every hallway, every signal, every nerve. It doesn't shout. It doesn't scream. It echoes, endlessly, softly, intimately, like a memory you've never had, but ache for just the same. I'm not alone in this body now. We are legion but not in number. In verse, we are the sermon made flesh. I thought the end would be fire, a scream, a final knocking from the other side of the wall. But there is no wall, not anymore. We opened it, you and I, with curiosity, with doubt, with need. We opened the altar, and inside was not a demon. It was a word that had waited since before Genesis, buried beneath the scripture of men, unwritten by any prophet, unspoken by any tongue, until now. Now it has a tongue in everyone. I walked into a city today. They were building a cathedral with no hands. Streets bent into rib cages. Windows blinked like eyes. And the spire, it sang. Children recited the blood psalm in playgrounds. Mothers wept ink. The skies pulsed with scripture carved into cloud. A man walked up to me. He had no face, just a mouth. And he said, "Thank you for opening the wall. You were the last silence." I asked him what that meant. He smiled. "It means nothing will ever be quiet again." I understand now. The knocking wasn't asking to be let out. It was warning us. The nun, Corrine, she wasn't the curse. She was the seal, the last voice held in chains. And I shattered her, with questions, with doubt, with obsession. The walls between worlds were brick. They were belief, and I preached their collapse. I am the final verse now. I can feel it writing itself through my tone, my marrow, my dreams, my name. Soon, I'll be gone, but he won't. He's already in you. If you've listened this far, you've already heard him. And once you hear him, you will never stop preaching.